Well, the transfer portal came to a close, and Mississippi State closed hard with several commitments. We'll break down each player. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/firetv locked on to learn more. I'm Jaron. You can catch my work over on Athlon Sports. I'm the National College Football writer there. That's Landon. And on today's show, we're going to talk about some key transfer portal additions for the football team. We'll also talk about the baseball team dropping another series. And then we will give you our top dog of the week to close things out. Yeah. But Landon, let's start it off with some transfer portal news. So we did our episode for Friday. And at that point, I think they had one recent commit. Maybe they just got a second one. But since then, it's been busy. They land Blake Steen, who was a starting offensive lineman for Virginia. He was an offensive tackle. I believe he was started 17 games in his career, and he's big, 6'5", 331 pounds. Now they got it. Probably slides in to play guard, if I had to guess, but that's just a guess. Then they followed that up with two tight ends, Sam West from Indiana, Max Reese from Eastern Michigan. And then they closed it out on Sunday with UTEP starting center Brennan Smith jumping on board. They lost two players during that time to sophomore cornerback Trey Wright entered the portal, and then Carson Lee entered the portal, who was an offensive lineman. So what's your thoughts?
I mean, you missed the long snapper that came in.
Yeah.
I mean, Myers. They really hit the positions we talked about them hitting, right. Offensive line and tight end. And it seems like, one of them, obviously, Smith is a center. But the other two, they have more of the body type for guard. But you figure one of them is going to be a tackle.
Yeah.
It's just kind of which one ends up being better outside. But you assume one of those guys is going to be a tackle. They wanted to be more dynamic at tight end. I think they got that. Both of these guys limited, not a ton of production, but Max Reese did show some pretty good explosive numbers. I believe he had about a little over 8 yards per reception. That's pretty good for a tight end. You don't normally see the more targets tight ends get, the lower those numbers tend to be, because they tend to be the safety blanket type. So, I think he kind of fits the bill for what we expected.
Yeah. No, for sure. And again, we talked about this on Friday's episode. Phil Loadholt has a type, and that type is guys like him. Not 6'9", but Jaquan Bolden, who we talked about on Friday, 6'6", 345 pounds. Blake Steen is 6'5", 331 pounds. And then Brennan Smith, 6'3", 305 pound center. He played at Austin. Yeah, he played at Austin P the 3 years before playing at UTEP, and he was an offensive tackle for them. Played center for UTEP, and that's, like you said, a really good-sized center, especially for the SEC. So they got some big boys coming in, and they needed it. We've talked about it. We talked about the spring game and how brutal it was, and with how brutal the offensive line was, and they needed to make some additions. And again, they added 3 guys that were starters.
Yeah, that's a lot of experience, and you assume that those guys are coming in with maybe not a guarantee for a spot, but like 75% chance. You're going to be the starter unless something crazy happens. So, I guess you pretty much have your new center, one new guard, and one new tackle. And hopefully that's enough to kind of turn over all the weaknesses that we saw from that spring game that just had the defensive line getting all those TFLs. Hopefully this really kind of does change the dynamic of this offensive line. And, sometimes you need the guys who are like the tone setters, and maybe that's what they got here is they got a couple tone setters that are going to come in and lift, rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation where the guys may not improve a ton that stay on the line, but because these other players are better and because their mentality, it just makes everyone a little bit better.
Yeah, and obviously Albert Reese the fourth and Trevor Mayberry, that's probably your right side of your offensive line, 2 guys that are returning to the team. then it's all the other positions you feel are up for grabs. I mean, Kobe Keenum kind of feels like the guy transferred from Kentucky, kind of feels like the guy that would start at center. But you, like I said, you just brought in Brennan, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens there. A lot of times with centers, you can see them flex over to a guard position too. If they have the strength, a lot of them can switch over there. So maybe, it's kind of, there's 3 players up for 2 spots, 2 centers and a guard, and there one of them will be the starting center, one will be the starting guard, the other will be the reserve on those 2 spots. So it's kind of interesting to see how it's going to shake out now that we won't really see them in action until September. I mean, we're just going to get practice notes until then and kind of figure out who's actually winning these battles.
And then tight end, we'll see what happens. They brought in Traore. I believe that was last year, I think it was, that they brought in him. I can't remember off the top of my head. But then you add Sam West. He was more of a blocking tight end. He only has 1 catch for 37 yards in his career, but he's 6'4", almost 250. Was a freshman also, so that's also probably why he didn't play much. But Max Reese is, as you mentioned, he is much more the prototypical pass catcher, 232 yards, 8.6 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns for Eastern Michigan. And he's a guy that also brings good size at 6'2", about 240. But he's your pass catcher more, and just again adds depth through a room that needed the depth, because you need to have that versatility where you have a lot of guys you can play.
Yeah, both of those guys can play together, because you mentioned West is more of the blocker and Reese is more of your wide tight end that's going to go out there and you can flex him out. He doesn't have to be in line all the time. He can stand up there on the end of the line, be the receiver. So he can also kind of function as just a big slot guy. I mean, when you have someone who's 6'2", 6'3", that size, maybe you can get a mismatch on a small corner or a linebacker and just put that guy, through it by having him run a little route right there. So hopefully, they got different pieces, time to mix and match and see who comes out on top, really.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening. And Traore, he transferred in 2023. I was trying to think, but when he actually came here, but it was 2023. I couldn't remember if it was 23 or 24. But well, again, like you mentioned, they hit the spots they had to hit, and we talked about it so much through this whole portal cycle. You had to hit these spots, and that's why when they were picked as one of the biggest losers, we were like, I wouldn't call them a loser, but they're not a winner yet either. I mean, you could argue they're a winner now because of the guys they've added. Now, Oklahoma, Texas, some of those schools added some great pieces too. And so if those are still the winners, so be it. But Mississippi State did a lot of nice things, and it should have fans at least excited because I think you're now at the point where, because of the depth, I don't think you have any stars on the offensive line, but because of the depth of average to above average offensive linemen, it shouldn't be a weakness.
You hope it's not. But this is kind of, you see this a lot with teams. If they don't know exactly what they're going to do at different spots, they get enough people in the building that they know if we have to line up tomorrow, we can. Exactly what that's going to look like, we don't know yet. But you see that a lot where they just try to plug all the holes. And yeah, it's hard to say they're a winner just because they didn't get any stars through the portal, but they added a lot of pieces along the O-line, which they clearly needed to do. Hopefully enough of them are good enough to play that doesn't become a detriment and just derail the entire season. And, they got a couple interesting pieces at tight end that could help this year and develop if they stick around, longer term, and see kind of what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. So again, we'll see what ends up happening with it, but well done. A great way to end. And Phil Loadholt, again, great job by him. He got to come in and evaluate, figure out what he likes as an offensive line coach, and it seems like his fingerprints were all over these 3 signings for sure. But all right, coming up next, Coming up next, the baseball team lost another heartbreaking series, this time to the Auburn Tigers. We'll break down what went wrong in that series. All right, well, the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You don't want to miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Landon, like I talked about, we got a big series with Mississippi State against Auburn, the number 11 team in the country. For baseball this weekend, it was at Auburn also. This comes after a heartbreaking extra inning loss to Ole Miss and a terrible series loss to the Florida Gators. They played hard. That's what I can say, I guess. They're still not a team that quits.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the today's game, or the Sunday game may have they kind of quit a little bit. They tried to come back, but it quickly turned right back on their heads on that one.
They jumped down like 11-2 or something like that right off the bat.
They tried to make it a game late, but then they got even more out of control. This, I mean, it's over. Like, this is done. Like, you won one, but you had a shot on Friday night with the 6-5 loss, and they tried to come back with 3 in the 7th, but then just couldn't do any more and ended up losing 6-5. And if they take that one, series looks great. You know, you won 2 out of 3, but you couldn't hold tied. You gave it up. Solid Saturday game, that 12-7 win. It looked good. Yeah. You gave yourself a chance to salvage the series on Sunday, and they blew it.
Right. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the Friday game, you get up 2-0 in the 4th inning. Then immediately Auburn scores 4 runs to go up 4-2. And, you know, they didn't trail the rest of the game. They tacked on 2 more runs. Like you said, it was tied at one point at 5 at the end of the top of the 7th. But again, next half of the inning. Yeah, it was every single time any momentum happened for Mississippi State, boom. It got snatched right away, and Auburn would score a run or 2 runs or, you know, whatever it was, 4 runs.
Whatever they needed, they got.
Yeah, exactly. And that was Pico's probably his worst outing in a while at least.
Yeah.
With the 6 earned runs, he had 8 strikeouts, so he did well there. And you know, it sucks for Ace Reese because he had such a great series. He had, I believe, 2 home runs in the final game. I mean, he's just had a really good season. And so is Pico. And those are 2 guys that are just going to be overlooked for the season they're having because of how bad Mississippi State is this year.
Yeah, it's hard to even – because I was looking through – you know, you look through the stats, you see who had good series at the end of it. And there's a couple batters that just great numbers. Like, you take those on their own, you're like, wow, great weekend. Then you look at what happened. It's like, wow, this weekend sucked. It's just it's a rough season. It's over. You know, we've tried to paint the picture of what could happen if things start breaking right. Things aren't breaking right.
We were optimistic. And when you came out of that Alabama series, there was a real path and not a difficult path either, a real path to make the tournament and, you know, maybe make it super regional or something like that. Yeah. But as soon as that Florida series happened, it like sucked all the life out. And then you follow that up with getting beat in extras and Ole Miss in a game you should have won, sucked the life right out. And in coaching, it was coaching and they did it in this game, and I can't remember which one it was or how many runs they allowed in a row, but leaving in a reliever for too long, and I believe it was in the Saturday game, so it actually got overlooked because they ended up winning the game. But it's just become a habit with these guys.
Yeah, it has, and it's just frustrating. It's annoying at this point watching this team, honestly, because you see all the good things they do, but it's undone by either mental errors, bad coaching, or both, and you're just left wondering why. What happened? Why are we here? How did we get here? We have, you know, we've named over the last couple of weeks, we've named all these players that are very good individual players who continuously put up good performances that just go to waste because of a couple mistakes or a couple bad coaching decisions.
Right, and it was Saturday. It was Stone Simmons. He allowed 4 runs in 1.1 innings, 1 1/3 innings. And
at least he got outs this time.
Yeah, and he went against 9 at bats. He had 9 at bats and he allowed 4 runs. And it's just like, why do we keep allowing these guys to stick in there? If it was one of those things that you are one of the best teams in baseball, and you were like, I just need to get some of these guys to go through adversity because we're going to need them later on. I get it. Let them in there. see what happens. They got to figure it out. And if you lose, you lose. It sucks, but you got to figure it out. Like Texas, they're number one. If they did that, fine. But that's not you, Mississippi State. Not right now. It's not. You were once that. You're not that anymore. And so you can't just keep leaving these guys in while the runs just keep tacking on. And you're just sitting there, with your arms crossed, looking like Darvin Ham when he was coaching the Lakers, just sitting there with your arms crossed while all these runs are happening.
Yeah, it's bad. I don't know. Like at this point, it's just let's get through this year. And I remember earlier in this year, we were like, oh, this Memphis team, that's your get right game. And they almost blew that.
Yes.
There. And they're playing, I honestly think they're playing worse now than when that game happened. If they lose to Memphis on Tuesday with their midweek game, who knows what's next? The wheels are coming off. You can already watch this team and know the wheels are coming off, but
they might already be coming off.
That happens, the wheels are off.
Yeah, because Memphis is 16-27 on the year and has lost 4 straight games.
It's getting bad. It's really, we've talked about it. What can Lemonis do to save his job? I don't think he can.
It's obviously if they just go on this incredible run where they don't lose a game the tournament, and then they win, they go sweep Kentucky, then sweep Ole Miss. There's these weird scenarios like that are like a 0.0001% chance of happening that could possibly save it. But on the flip side, Zach Selman, we don't know his track record on how he handles these situations. Does he just move on? Does he have someone in mind now? Lemonis wasn't a hire by him. So maybe it's easier for him to part from something like that. We talked about how difficult it'd be for him to part from Levy because Levy was a hire from him and someone he's close to. And so that makes you wonder. We don't know because he doesn't have a track record of how does he handle these situations.
Yeah, this is, obviously Levy was his first hire in the first week, but this is his first big real decision. He has to decide, do I fire a guy who won a national title not that long ago? It hasn't done anything since. Mm-hmm. And what you also have to do is if you make that decision, you have to make sure that you have someone that can come in that is going to be, uphold the standard. You can't bring someone after that who's worse and lets it slide even farther. So, there's a lot on Selman this offseason. I don't think we're going to see a decision quickly. I think he's going to take his time on it, but I do think Lemonis will end up losing his job after this. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a quick decision. I think Selman's really going to do some due diligence before.
I think you're going to get through the World Series and kind of see what assistants are out there. Yeah. And that's probably who you kind of pull from. I know early in the season, someone were like, let's fire Lemonis, but keep Justin Parker, the pitching coach, make him the head coach. I'm not keeping anyone on the staff, and especially how terrible Parker's been lately. Parker might be the worst coach on the staff, how he's handled it lately with continuing to leave these relievers in. It's
that pitching coach has to go.
Yeah. Early on, I was kind of on board. I could see them promoting him. He's done really well. The way he's handled the last 2-3 weeks, he doesn't deserve a job at Mississippi State either.
No, it's not. The only person I might keep is whoever they put over these errors because they keep going down.
Right.
Whoever well. Handling that, maybe keep him around.
Unless it's Lemonis.
Demote him, infield coordinator, something like that. There has to be major shakeups. There's too much individual talent, and there's too many mental errors. It's time to shake things up this season. And like I said, we've tried to be as positive and keep hope alive till the very end. And I'm done with it's over. It's time.
And people will learn this about us, especially when it's football season. We're not one of those people that are just going to say, hey, the season's over and not give you any reasons why or how things could turn around. We're going to give you a breakdown of this is how they could turn things around. This is what's possible. This is what's not possible and things like that. And so when we were breaking it down early on and giving hope, if you want to call it that, it was because there was a real path and they had shown up to that point being good enough to win some of those games. Exactly. And then they just completely fell off. They won some series that we didn't think they really could win, and they blew a series that they easily should have won. And it's just been a crazy team to watch all season long. But all right, coming up next, we have our top dog of the week. Don't go anywhere.
There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. And here's why I use Gametime is for those last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, the code is you create an account and redeem the code LOCKED, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, top dog of the week. Who are you giving it to?
All right, I'm going a little out of the box for this one. With that baseball performance, I just didn't feel good giving it to anyone, even though we mentioned a couple guys who had good weekends. This is going to be a joint one. It's to all of the Mississippi State Bulldogs that signed as undrafted free agents following the NFL draft. You know, everyone goes to college. They want to make it to an NFL team, and some of these guys did. You know, I know for sure Stone Blanton signed with the Niners.
Wasn't that a perfect fit?
It's great.
He just feels like a 49er.
It makes sense. And as a Cowboys fan, I don't like it because he's going to end up playing there for a decade and make me angry at some point. Jimmy Bell Jr. signed with the Chargers, and then I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. The wide receiver, Kelly A., signed with the Bills. I'm sure others have signed. It's so hard to keep up with wherever free agent goes. So if I missed anyone, I apologize. But congratulations to everyone who made it. I mean,
And like this year, some of the team accounts have tweeted out some of the players, but they don't tweet all the players. And so that would make it a lot easier if they would just send like a list or send out something to keep up with. But I like that one. I went with the coach again because I went with Phil Loadholt because I just thought the getting those 3 signees was massive. We have talked about how concerning the offensive line has been and was all spring. And we've talked about it for multiple weeks. It wasn't just the spring game that led us to talk about that. The spring game is what put it over the top, where it was like, this might be worse than we even thought it was, and we thought it was bad. And then you lose Jesse Ramil, who was projected to be a starter, and it was like, oh, great. Like, what are we doing here? Because we already have a bad offensive line. Now we lost a guy that had a lot of experience, who was almost a prized transfer portal addition. What are we going to do here? And then he comes back and gets the signees that he got. Now they have to go out there and perform, and that's big. I saw someone said, "Oh well, what do you expect when you hire the coach that allowed his team allowed 38 sacks last year?" Well, he took over for a team that allowed 52 sacks, and he cut that to 38. So I mean, and he developed a true freshman into a first team all true freshman All-American, and just got a big paycheck to go to Texas Tech, from what I've heard. I don't know if it was a big paycheck or not, but he's at Texas Tech.
Right.
And I know they're dealing out money, so I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get some kind of big paycheck. But he's got at least a decent track record of doing some really good things. And even though he's only been an offensive line coach, the full positional coach for one season, I think he's been an assistant some other years. But I give it up for Phil Loadholt. He did a great job with closing out this class. I mean, obviously, it's not completely closed because you can still sign some guys that entered late or stuff like that. So it's mostly done. Yeah. Because at this point, you're trying to figure out your roster for when summer starts back up, summer workouts and things like that. Should be done on the announcements of players entering the portal. I know technically,
I think so by now.
Yeah, as long as you entered by Friday and submitted it by, I can't remember the exact time, but as long as you submitted by that time, you technically can enter. Sometimes those things take a couple days to process.
But by now, you'd think they're out.
Yeah, and with the weekend, maybe it pushes it where you hear some on Monday, but I would assume you're probably done with hearing of more people entering the portal. So hats off to Phil Loadholt and Jeff Lubbock. He gets credit for that too, but great work by them.
Oh yeah, and definitely, I think Phil Loadholt, those sack numbers, and you can ask offensive line coach, offensive coordinators, everyone, how many of those sacks are on Shedeur?
That's the thing that
a lot of them were on him.
I don't think a lot of people understand that.
In the 5th round, how many are on him?
Yeah. I don't think everyone understands sacks aren't just on the offensive line. It can be on a running back messing up and a blocking and stuff. It can be on the quarterback misreading something or holding onto the ball too long. It can be on the receivers just not getting open. Like, there's so much that goes into that. Like, they could draw up a play where they purposefully unblock someone because it's supposed to be a quick pass and we're blocking for it, and the quarterback doesn't throw it quick and he gets drilled. That's not on the offensive line.
No, and the way you can tell, I believe this was Mitchell Schwartz that said this on a podcast once. You can always tell whose fault the sack is by if the offensive lineman goes to help up the quarterback. If they let the quarterback lay there, it's on the quarterback.
Yeah, and you usually can tell because they're like pointing at each other, like, why didn't you do this? If it's on the offensive line. If it's not on the offensive line, they usually aren't looking at each other like, what did you do?
What went wrong?
Yeah, it's usually, someone else made the mistake. And I've seen a lot where they unblock the guy because they want the running back to pick it up because it gives them numbers, and the running back doesn't pick it up, runs out for a pass or something, and the guy gets sacked. Yeah, or just whiffs. And so that's obviously not on the offensive line either. So hats off to Phil Loadholt, though. Very well job done, and hats off to all the undrafted free agents for signing. Congrats to them. So, all right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football going on right now. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. Yes. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We're posting videos on there Monday through Friday typically. So check out that and tell your friends about us. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.